After winning the Super Bowl in 2001, the Patriots had a bit of a dilemma, as they had a quarterback controversy. On one hand, they had Drew Bledsoe, their number 1 overall pick from 1993, who has been their starter since, and they just signed to a 10-year deal before 2001. But they also have second-year quarterback Tom Brady, who was Drew Bledsoe's backup for 2001, and then was thrusted into the starter when Bledsoe got injured, and he played good enough to lead the Patriots to the Super Bowl. So the Patriots were stuck with, what are they going to do? In the end, in our timeline, they kept Brady, and he would go on to be the starter for them all the way up to 2019, and would lead them to 8 more Super Bowls, and winning 5 more before he would leave to play with the Buccaneers. Drew Bledsoe, meanwhile, he would be traded, strangely enough, to the Bills of all teams. They actually traded in their division. He played pretty good in 2002, but after 2 disappointing years, he was then cut, which he then signed with the Cowboys in 2005, before he would be benched in the middle of 2006 to be replaced by Tony Romo. He would then be cut and then retired after 2006. But what if it was different? What if instead the Patriots decided to keep Bledsoe instead? So here we go. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if? An NFL theory. So in this timeline, the Patriots keep Bledsoe. After all, they had him for that long-term deal, so it would make sense. So then the question is, what do they do with Brady? I side they're going to trade him. But I didn't want to trade him to the Bills. That does not make sense to me. Honestly, them trading Bledsoe to the Bills makes no sense to me to this day. But Brady, that would be even worse. You're trading a quarterback who would inevitably play you for the next 15 plus years possibly. That would not work. So instead, I decided to trade him to someone else. I went around looking up all the teams and spent several hours researching on who would make a good fit for Brady to be traded to. In the end, I came up with 2 teams, the Ravens and the Lions. At first, I thought the Lions would make maybe a good sense, as they needed a rebuild, and instead of maybe drafting Joey Harrington, maybe they can get Brady instead. But then I figured they would probably need to trade a whole bunch of picks, especially a bunch of first rounders, and if they're really in a rebuild mode, they probably can't afford that, so I decided, screw it, he won't go to the Lions. Instead, the Ravens would be a good option. As remember, the Ravens were just 2 years removed from a Super Bowl win, and they were going through salary cap issues, so they were going to have to cut some players, and they were not going to probably play that good in 2002, so maybe they could take a risk, trade some picks away, get Brady in, have a good quarterback, and maybe they can contend and still be in the playoff mix in 2002. That would be the idea, and that's what would happen, as they would trade Brady to the Ravens. And as for the Bills, this would just be a lame duck year for them. So in 2002, with his new team, Brady and the Ravens hoped to do very well, but believe it or not, despite the fact that they had the much superior quarterback, they actually would do worse in his timeline, as Brady would play badly in the games that they needed to win, and he would also play badly in games that they barely held on to win. So they actually would regress to 6-10 instead of 7-9. Incredible. Better quarterback can do worse. And meanwhile, for the Patriots, the defending champs, Bledsoe statistically was almost similar to how Brady played in 2002. But in the games that he needed to do good in order for him to keep winning, he did not do good in. So the Patriots themselves also disappoint, as they went 6-10 instead of 9-7 after winning the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, the Bills, without Bledsoe's Pro Bowl year, instead of going 8-8, they only improved to 4-11-1. And in the updated 2002 standings, nothing changes. So going into 2003 draft, the big change would be the Bills. Since they don't have Drew Bledsoe, they need a quarterback. And since the Ravens don't need him since they got Brady, the Bills will now draft Kyle Bollard instead. So in 2003, Brady and the Ravens, he didn't play as good in 2003 as he did in 2002, but the Ravens played much better, especially since they had to rely on Jamal Lewis. So the Ravens improved. Instead of 10-6, they would go 12-4. Meanwhile, Patriots with Bledsoe, which is funny because Bledsoe played really badly in 2003. He threw just 11 touchdowns to 13 picks in all 16 games. But despite that, in my random calculations, the Patriots would still, thanks to that number 1 defense, to have done just good enough to have a massive bounce back year. They don't go 14-2, but they go 12-3-1 instead. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, for the Bills, now that they have Kyle Buller, he did not statistically play that much different from Bledsoe, so they still finished 6-10. And in the updated 2003 stands, the NFC side doesn't change at all. In the AFC, the Ravens move up to the 2nd seed as the Chiefs fall to the 4th seed. Then we get to our divisional matchups as the Chiefs now visit the Patriots, as the Colts visit the Ravens, and the Chiefs with the high-powered offense and with Drew Bledsoe's terrible stats, the Chiefs beat the Patriots. And then for the Colts, thanks to their high-powered offense, they overwhelmed Brady and the Ravens, as both the Ravens and the Patriots would be one and done. So now the Super Bowl would be the Colts and the Panthers. And I think the game would go just like how it did in real life, with the Colts replacing the Patriots with the win. Then going into the 2004 draft, it would be a pretty big change, of course. The Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, and just like I said before with like Eli Manning, since the Raiders don't have the quarterback history like the Chargers did, the Raiders would draft Eli and he would have no problem playing with them. As the Giants would draft Big Ben, the Chargers still would get Phillip Rivers. And since the Bills don't need him, since they got Kyle Buller from the previous year, the 49ers now draft J.P. Losman instead, as the Steelers are once again without their quarterback. So in 2004, Brady would play much better, and the Ravens would improve once again as they would go 13-3. And then with the Patriots, Drew Bledsoe played better, but he wasn't as good as Brady was. And the Patriots regress as they finished 10-6. Meanwhile, for the Bills with Kyle Buller, he played somewhat similar to how Drew Bledsoe did. So the Bills still finished 9-7 as they did in our timeline. And then in a quick rundown with all the other teams, Eli and the Raiders would finish 4-12 again. Big Ben and the Giants would improve to 6-10. The Steelers without Big Ben would only go 10-6. And the J.P. Losman-led 49ers would actually fall to 2-13-1. So now in the updated 2004 stands, in the NFC side, the Cardinals get the 6th seed over the Vikings. And the AFC, the Colts move up to the number 1 seed. Ravens make the playoffs as the 2nd seed. Jets move up to win the AFC East as the 3rd seed. The Broncos move up to the 5th seed. And the Patriots get in still as the 6th seed. And oh dear God, this is just crazy. So the Patriots would visit the Jets. And the Patriots with Bledsoe would do just enough to beat the Jets, unlike how they beat the Chargers in real life. So it sets them up as a divisional matchup at the Colts, which of course, even with Bledsoe instead of Brady, holding the Colts to 3 points, they would still get the win. So the AFC Championship is the Patriots at the Ravens, as Brady would get his first playoff matchup against his former team, as the Ravens looked really good and looked like this could be the year they finally make the Super Bowl. But unfortunately for Brady, he did not get the extra touchdown needed for it, so the Patriots with Drew Bledsoe would stun the Ravens as they would make the Super Bowl. So the Super Bowl would be the Eagles and Patriots still, but of course, this time with Bledsoe instead of Brady. And this time around, Bledsoe needed to get one more touchdown in order to secure a Patriots win. And on the random draw, he could not do it. So despite the same matchup, the Eagles this time get the win. So in the 2005 draft, the 49ers still have the number 1 overall pick, but since they got J.P. Losman the previous year, they don't need to get Alex Smith. So he then falls to the 2nd overall pick, which is the Browns, who pick him up. So in 2005, Brady and the Ravens, who fell so short of making the Super Bowl, tried to get back again, but the Ravens and Brady too struggled that year as they regressed to 10-6. Meanwhile, Drew Bledsoe and the Patriots struggled as well off their Super Bowl hangover as they go 7-9, and the Bills with Kyle Orton regress as he didn't play as good as they went 6-10. So for the rest of the teams, the Eli-led Raiders finished 5-11. The Big Ben-led Giants finished 10-6. The Big Ben-less Steelers finished 11-5. The J.P. Losman 49ers finished 5-11. And the Alex Smith-led Browns finished 2-14. So in the updated 2005 standings, everything is out of whack. As the Buccaneers move up to the 2nd seed, the Giants fall to the move up to the 3rd seed as the Bears fall to the 4th seed, and the Vikings make the playoffs as the 6th seed. And the NFC side, the Chiefs make the playoffs as the 2nd seed, the Steelers move up to the 3rd seed, the Dolphins make the playoffs as the 4th seed, and the Broncos make the playoffs still as the 6th seed, as we have 3 teams, the Ravens, Bengals, and Chargers, all being 10-6 and still missing the playoffs. So for the playoffs, we're going to start in the NFC as the Giants would beat the Vikings before they would beat the Buccaneers, and then in the NFC Championship, they would visit the Seahawks, and Big Ben would put up an incredible game, and the Seahawks, despite their legendary offense, could not keep up with Big Ben, and the Steelers stunned the Seahawks as they make the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, on the AFC side, we have to look at the Broncos as they visit the Steelers. As unfortunately for Steelers, without Big Ben, the Broncos stunned them in an upset to get the win, and then they visit the Colts, and since it was a low-scoring game, remember, the Broncos do just enough to hold on for the win. So the AFC Championship is the Broncos now at the Chiefs, but the Broncos this time could not keep up with the Chiefs' high-scoring offense as the Chiefs get it. So the Super Bowl is now the Chiefs and the Giants, and the Chiefs would do enough to get the win and their first title in 46 years. So there are 2 changes going into 2006. First, since the Ravens have Brady, they do not need to trade for Steve McNair, so he stays on the Titans, but he would be the mentor for Vince Young, who they would still draft. But a quarterback change would be the Steelers, as previous theories on this. They would take Jay Cutler as they had the higher up pick before the Broncos to get their Big Ben replacement that they never had. In 2006, the Brady-led Ravens played good with the league's #1 defense, but despite having the better quarterback, the Ravens once again struggled compared to real life 2006 as they only improved to 11-5 instead of 13-3. Meanwhile, the Drew Bledsoe-led Patriots in his final year, he would struggle really badly, but the Patriots were still just a good enough team that they finished 10-6. Meanwhile, oh my goodness, the Bills with Kyle Bowler, he didn't start at all in 2006 as he was the backup behind Steve McNair for the Ravens, but in the 2 games he played, he put up 5 touchdowns, and he had really good stats in 2006 because of that. So, keep that in mind, he would throw 2.5 touchdowns a game in this 2006 simulation, so he would put up 40 touchdowns in a season. So, with this in mind, the Bills stun us as they go 10-6 with an incredible performance by Kyle Orton. And then for the other teams, the Eli-managed Giants still finished 5-11 as they did. The Giants, with their Super Bowl hangover with Big Ben struggling, would finish 7-8-1. And then Jay Cutler on the Steelers, much better quarterback than Big Ben was that year, as they would go 13-3. Then for the 49ers, J.P. Losman had a good year, better than Alex Smith, but the 49ers actually do worse as they finished 5-11. And then the Browns, oh god, Alex Smith, even though he was the better quarterback than the quarterbacks they had in 2006, they end up going 1-15. Oh my god. Meanwhile, for the Titans, they would actually have a really strong start with Steve McNair, but then during the year, Steve McNair would get injured, and then Vince Young would take over, and he would do just good enough where he would eventually take over the starting role for the Titans. and that momentum would continue as the Titans would improve to 10-5-1. And then in the updated 2006 stands, the only change in the NFC side is the Packers getting into the 6th seed instead of the Giants. In the AFC side, it is all turned all over, as the Steelers now get the number 1 seed, the Chargers fall to the 2nd seed, the Titans make the playoffs of the 3rd seed, the Bills make the playoffs of the 4th seed in a freeway tie, the Ravens fall all the way down to the 5th seed, and the Colts fall to the 6th seed. And how about that? Once again, 3 teams, Jets, Patriots, and Chiefs, all 10-6, all don't make the playoffs. My God. But all of our focus in this playoffs will be solely on the AFC, as it would start off with the Colts at the Titans. As the Titans would struggle really badly, the Colts would still get the win. Then it would be the Ravens at the Bills, a rematch from the previous week. And Brady played good, but Kyle Bowler, oh my God, those 2.5 touchdowns, 2 guaranteed touchdowns, plus a 50% chance of a 3rd one would be just too much for the Ravens to overcome as the Bills get the win. Then the Bills would visit the Chargers, and the same thing would happen as the Bills would get the win and stun the Chargers just like the Chargers in real life lost to the Patriots. And of course the Steelers would host the Colts. It would be a low-scoring game, but Jay Cutler would play much better than Steve McNair did with the Ravens when the Colts played them, so the Steelers would hold on to get the win. So the AFC Championship is Bills at Steelers, and the Steelers would put up a really high-scoring game, so the Bills, if they had any chance to win this game, needed Kyle Bowler to get that 50% third touchdown, but this time around, he would not get it, so the Steelers would win it. And Super Bowl 41 is now the Steelers and the Bears. Jay Cutler, I don't know why I'm getting my names all mixed up, would play better than Peyton did, but they would not get enough points off of it. But it would still be a close one, as they would win it 21-17 to get their first title in 27 years. And that is, of course, where this theory would left off, as Drew Bledsoe would retire after 2006. So the Patriots would have been worse in this scenario. They would make 1 Super Bowl appearance, but they wouldn't win it. And of course, they don't make it the other time. But they would still at least be a competent, average, good team at least. Being up and down, kind of like how the Ravens were during that time. Now, of course, they would need a quarterback in 2007, so who knows what will happen in that regard. But, hey, Jamarcus Russell and Brady Quinn, the 2 quarterbacks taken in the first round of 2007, would not go to the Browns or the Raiders, so maybe they would take one of them, maybe, particularly Brady Quinn. For the Ravens, Brady would have to help them massively, but in the end, it still wouldn't make a difference yet for them. They still wouldn't even make a Super Bowl. Now, 2007, when Brady puts up his 50 touchdowns, that can help them. But remember, the Ravens went 5-11 that year. So even that 50 touchdowns that Brady puts up, that might not be enough. We'll have to wait and see if I come back to this theory, see if it would be enough. And the Bills would, ironically, funny enough, be better somewhat. They would actually make the playoffs thanks to Kyle Bowler's incredible 2006 season. But that was a one-time thing, most likely, as Bowler did not really play good in 2007 and then missed all of 2008 to an injury. So enjoy that hot 2006 season, Bills, because that was most likely it. So maybe since the Ravens don't need Flacco, maybe the Bills would get him, or something else maybe possibly would happen. But in the end, that's how this theory would go. I hope you all enjoyed, and hey, it's just a theory, an NFL theory. As the next theories coming up are going to be really short ones. They're going to involve collapses, which I can't wait to talk about. So see you guys then. The next 4 theories are going to be very short, so I can get them done really, really quickly coming up very soon, before I get to a multi-part series, which I've never done on this series yet. That's going to be insane. See you guys then.